Italy and Iran have been the hardest hit countries by COVID-19 outside mainland China, where the virus started. The Italian government on Tuesday announced over 31,000 confirmed cases, an increase of more than 3,500 from the day before, while the number of deaths topped 2,500. Iran, meanwhile, has reported over 16,000 infections and close to 1,000 deaths. Now, in both countries and increasingly across the world, thousands of locals who live in areas with major outbreaks have been placed under quarantine or are choosing not to leave their homes to reduce the risk of spreading the virus. To talk about how daily life has changed with the ongoing spread of COVID-19, we connect with Gabriel Barbati, a video journalist for VOA in Rome, and Masih Alinejad, an Iranian journalist and activist based in New York. Well, let's start with you first, Gabriel. All of Italy has been on lockdown for over a week as the southern European country became the hardest hit nation in Europe by the COVID-19 pandemic that we see across the world. And normally, even at this time of year where you are in Rome, the city is bustling with life and thousands of tourists on the streets. But now it must be a time of fear, uncertainty and sadness as well. So how has daily life changed over the past 10 days?
Well, the change has been dramatic. I live in downtown Rome, and until a few days ago, I had to fend off tourists on my way home. Now streets are deserted, shops are closed, and myself, I had to, I basically left the house only a few times in the last 15 days just to queue up for groceries and for medicines. Since when the government decided for the lockdown, basically families like mine have been staying at home with kids. And basically our biggest concern in Rome, where we got just 500 cases and 20 casualties, the main concern has been frustration and maybe, of course, concern for my parents who are in their late 70s. Of course, they are more at risk of dying of this infection. But let's think for a second about Lombardy, where you have the hotbed of this outbreak in Italy, where 240 deaths of the last 345 of today happened. People I know, friends and family in Milan, are more than concerned and almost verging to panic. And smaller towns like Lecco, Bergamo, they are really the epicenter of what is going on. And it's most likely a person who dies there is either a family member, a friend, or a person you know.
Yes, they're all friends and family, and it must be a very concerning time. And do you think the lockdown was a good idea? And how are Italians responding to these government measures?
Well, in hindsight, it's a bit ironic that only 10 days ago we were talking about whether closing or not, stopping or not the National Soccer League, and people were still protesting that they couldn't go to the stadium anymore, where you have thousands of people in attendance. Now, after 30,000 cases, 2,500 deaths, basically people are falling in line. They are keeping the rules, they are keeping social distances, they are keeping this lockdown, and except, of course, a few exceptions, people are appreciating what the decision the government has taken. Apart from the first few days where the government was over-concerned probably about the economy. Yes, you have people at home, you keep people safe, but then basically you're stopping the economy and you're going to pay the price down the road. But the government's been consistent, it's been very transparent, and last but not least, they just approved 25 billion euros to support companies, families, the health system, and workers. So we are a bit less concerned about what's going to happen after this health emergency, when we will have to reckon with our life and our works and our economy.
Right, and reassurance from the government as well as transparency, of course, is so important. And I'm glad we're seeing that in Italy. Well, now let's turn to you, Masih. You've been observing your home country of Iran all the way from New York. And of course, in Iran, the pandemic has also infected thousands. And the Persian New Year is actually this week. But with the COVID-19 outbreak, it seems that there won't really be much cause for celebration. Well, from your observations, how has daily life changed across Iran since the outbreak?
It's very sad. Yeah, it's our New Year coming. I didn't even realize until you mentioned about it. We don't have this feeling. People are in mourning. And but let me tell you something. What we are suffering, it's not just coronavirus in Iran. In Islamic Republic, I have to say that Iranian people are suffering from a more deadly virus, which is called religious dictatorship. There is no transparency. The number of the killings, the number of, the people who got killed by coronavirus, it's 5 or, sometimes even more, 5 times or 6 times more than the statistics that the government announced. So that is why people are very, very worried. Look what happened in Italy. The lockdown actually helped people to stay at home. But in my country, it's only the nurses, the doctors, they sacrifice their life, but the government, the authorities, they don't want to close down even the religious centers. And after days and days of witnessing killings and the number of dead people getting higher every day, finally the government decided to shut down religious centers after some of the people actually licking the shrine or kissing the shrine and spreading the coronavirus around. Finally, they decided to shut down the religious centers, but it's still a lot of people don't know what's going to happen when the government, the authorities itself actually do not care about the lives of Iranian people. And recently, number of activists in Iran, number of journalists got arrested just because of criticizing the Iranian authorities for its way of handling coronavirus.
There indeed has been international concern really over how the virus is being handled and even contained in Iran, especially with Iranian government officials themselves falling ill. Well, what kind of steps do the Iranian public want to see from the government and health authorities?
Most important thing, transparency. Then we actually are very worried when our government, the regime in Iran, calling the rest of the world for help, but people do not trust this regime. So I'm being in touch with many people inside Iran every day, receiving videos from them. I've been talking to doctors, nurses. They actually have a demand. They want the International Health Organization directly get involved in the distribution of medical equipment rather than just giving money to this government. We want them to directly supervise about the distribution of medical equipment or any kind of thing, face masks, anything, because this regime should not be trusted. And I'm going to give you an example about why people in Iran, they don't trust this regime. Before the election, you won't believe me, this government knew about the coronavirus, and it was the anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. They knew about the coronavirus, but they hid that because they wanted a big turnout to show the rest of the world that, see, the Islamic Republic is stable. But they actually helped the coronavirus be more spread and infected. The Islamic regime could have contained and closed down Qom, the religious epicenter of coronavirus. They didn't, and they couldn't. They could have stopped the flight to Wuhan, China. They didn't. So that is why people do not trust this regime. First and most important thing, they want international communities, especially International Health Organization, directly get involved and support the people inside Iran.
Right, and as you said, public morale is so important, especially in times of crisis. But over in Italy, we saw Italian residents join together to sing from their balconies during the lockdown and even flash lights from their balconies. And many local residents are trying to keep their spirits up. This showed how Italian citizens really bonded together while maintaining social distancing. So Gabriel, can you tell us more about this whole phenomenon going on and how it all started?
Well, it started as usual on social media with people filming themselves singing the national anthem on the balcony, and then soon it transformed itself into flash mobs. I can tell you that every day at 6 p.m. I can hear people just putting speakers on outside the windows and playing three of their favorite songs. That's to show how people care for each other. But it's not just unity, patriotism. It's people understanding, one, that we can overcome this only if we act as one person. Two, because there are doctors and nurses, as Masih said, working on the front line, and sadly, 2,500 of them have been infected, and some have died here in Italy. So there is a real show of empathy for people like them fighting this infection. But it's also the idea that we are all in this together, meaning that either we all keep social distancing and all the health rules, and we keep this lockdown in place, or it takes just one person to restart the whole thing. And we are especially concerned about the southern part of the country because it's basically been marginally touched so far. But many people have left recently Milan or the north of the country and went back to their hometowns down south. And probably, and that's one of the main fears here, is that we're going to see new hotbeds in the southern part of the country that could actually make all this suffering, all this crisis much longer.
Well, it's so encouraging to hear how Italians are really banding together and weathering the storm with your heads held high. And of course, this impact on daily life, this story isn't just going to be limited to countries like Italy and Iran, with the coronavirus spreading all over the world, and to the US, where you are right now, Masih, where the outbreak has recently started to surge there. But we are seeing similar waves of panic and sudden spikes of infections and deaths as we did in Europe and in Iran as well. So how has daily life changed in the US? And based on the responses and the reactions that we've seen in Iran and other countries, how do you hope that US authorities will handle this crisis?
That's a very good question. From the beginning, actually, I was a little bit worried about Trump's position on coronavirus because President Trump didn't take it seriously. And a lot of journalists and media really criticized him, thanks to First Amendment and freedom of expression here in the United States of America. So the journalists, the media actually criticized President Trump a lot. And I think right now President Trump take it more seriously, and that shows that people in America should take it serious as well. When Trump takes it serious, it means something. So, and I myself, when I went out today, I found that in our office, less than 10 people were attending. We're not allowed to, actually. And the subway, New York is a crazy city. It's a very, very crazy city. The subway was very quiet and peaceful. Actually, people trying to keep the social distance and trying to follow the rules. And that's very, very good sign, especially coming from a country where, you know, the authorities never care about the lives of its own people. It makes me a double feeling. It makes me have double feeling. Like, I thanks the authorities here, the government here, that they care about people. I thanks the transparency here, but still, my heart is in my homeland. I live in my laptop. I live in social media. I keep hearing from people they're begging from help, they're begging from transparency. So for me, it's not easy. Look, I have 2 stepchildren. Both of them stopped going to school. The schools are shut down. But my niece and nephews inside Iran, they were like begging, like my people inside Iran, they were begging universities to shut down and, care about their lives and health. Nobody paid attention to them. So for me, it's still difficult. It's frustrating.
Well, that's where we'll have to leave our discussion today. But it's so clear from our discussion that in these times of difficulty, public morale, trust and transparency is so essential to helping us get through this crisis. Thank you both for joining us from Rome and New York, and I hope the situation gets better soon in your respective countries. Gabriel Barbati in Rome and Masih Alinejad in New York.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, this is also where we wrap up our show. Thank you for watching. Join us at the same time tomorrow for more global insights on issues making headlines. Until then, have a lovely day or evening, wherever you are. Goodbye.